Do ghosts really exist? Are we alone? Is there life after death?
It looks like a giant ape with a man's face.
We've done some testing to determine if it is a synthesizer or not.
Welcome to Chasing the Truth from the Normal to the Paranormal. My name's Sean Graham, and you found me on the Dark Waters radio channel. We're on the Paranormal radio app right now, TalkStreamLive.com under the Dark Waters radio. Plus, we're over on YouTube in the Dark Waters channel there. Tonight's guest is Timothy Renner, and I'll talk about him in just a little bit. First, I need you to go over to IamDarkWaters.com and subscribe, and there you can get everything paranormal that you want to put your hands on, from Dogman to Wendigo stories to whatever Dark Waters is actually putting out. So it's a fantastic subscription. You have to go over at Dark Waters, IamDarkWaters.com, and find that subscription button, subscribe today. Plus, you'll get all access to all of my podcasts there. And I think tonight I'm actually on podcast number 49, if I'm not mistaken. So we're getting up there. This month is my first year as a podcaster for Chasing the Truth, and tonight we're actually going to do a little bit of giveaway. Dark Waters has a drawstring bag with the Dark Waters radio logo on it, and for the first 20 callers, which I'll let you know when we get start doing live callers, we'll be giving those away, one for each caller. All I need from you is your email address, and send me your contact information, and I'll send one out to you. But tonight, on the Dark Waters radio channel, Chasing the Truth with Sean Graham, that's me, Timothy Renner. He has written articles for several publications, including Morbid Curiosity, Weird USA, Weird Pennsylvania. His illustrations have appeared in fanzines, comics, magazines, books, and on many record covers. He plays and sings folk music with his band Stone Breath. To date, they have released 12 full-length albums and multiple EPs. Timothy has studied various paranormal phenomena centered in south-central Pennsylvania, with a particular focus on legend of Toad Road and the Seven Gates of Hell. He also is an author. He's authored 4 books that I'm aware of: Beyond the Seventh Gates, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania, Bigfoot, West Coast Wild Men, and Don't Look Behind You. So welcome aboard, Timothy Renner. How you doing today, sir? Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself that I just didn't cover just now. Everything, yeah. Oh, hold on just a second. Oh, man. You know what I did? I have, let's see. Whoops. Include audio input. Yep. There we go. Go ahead and say something now. Nope. Well, internal speakers. Yeah. Aha. There we go. Now you should be coming through. I apologize, folks. A little technical difficulty. And here we go. I've got Timothy Renner on the line. So,
all right,
there we go.
So like I was saying, I grew up in the golden age of Bigfoot. You know, 1970s when I was born, and the Patterson-Gimlin film had just been made, and Legend of Boggy Creek came out shortly after that, and In Search Of was on TV, and it just fired me up as a kid. Ironically, I'd seen a UFO. I never saw any Bigfoot or anything as a kid. I just really liked the legend. I saw a UFO when I was a kid. My mom woke me up when I was about 8 years old and asked me if I wanted to see a UFO. And, what 8-year-old kid's going to say no to that? No. So saw a UFO at a young age, but I was really, really interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon. And then I hit teenage years and got into music and girls and whatever else and fell out of it. But then as an adult, once I got the internet, I started poking around and realizing there's, it's still there. It never left. I left it, but it kept going, and became fascinated with it. And about the time I wrote my first book, I realized how many local sightings there were, and that really kind of fired me up. So I've been kind of full bore for the past 5 years or so.
Okay. Hold on just a second. For some reason, we're not doing... let me see if anybody is actually listening to us. No sounds. Can't hear your guess, Sean. Gee whiz. How am I going to fix this? Yay. Can you hear me now, folks? Give me a 1 if you can, 2 if you can't. We're in a YouTube, for whatever reason, if I call in, may I tell about my... Oh, never mind. They can hear me, but not you for some reason. Let's see. That is weird. Let's see. Let me go down here and see what we've got. This is one. Well, it sounds like they can't hear you for some reason, and I don't know why. This is weird. So, folks, what I'm doing right now is I actually am trying to do all this job on my own, so I'm just letting you know what I'm doing in the background. So, hold on just a second. Let's see what we've got. Everything should be going to the radio.co. Now, let's see. It seems like the YouTube is the issue here. Hold on just a second. So, what we need to do is go, let's see, internal speakers. Let's go out to that and see if that'll work. Okay, now let's try it now, Tim. Try that out.
I'm coming through now.
I can hear you, but I don't know if they can hear you. Let's see if they can hear you. Hello. Where are you? Right here you are. Okay, now go ahead and say a little something.
All right. Can you hear me out there?
I don't think so. Oh, wow. They can hear you on my end, I think, but not the other end for some reason. Crazy. All right, folks. So, let's see. What else we want to do? Live YouTube camera. I don't want camera. Yes. This is just annoying. I do apologize for technical difficulties as we're going through here. Let's see. What else can we do? Hey, Tim, what I can do is have you call me. Recall me back on the same Skype number. No, wait just a second. Yeah, call me back on the same Skype number, and we'll go from there. And I know I can get you through that way. So
Use my phone and call me.
No. You do the Skype thing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to reroute it through my soundboard instead of digitally. So just go ahead and recall me.
Hang up and call back.
Hang up and call back.
All right.
All right. Sorry about that, folks. This is the first time I've actually tried to do a little bit of YouTube and plus this at the same time, but here we go. We're going to try her again. Okay, Tim, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, hold on just a second. All right, let me go over to the YouTube. And I apologize for all that stuff that's coming up here. Hopefully we've got it. All right, go ahead, Tim, and see.
All right, can you hear me now?
It looks like we've got you. I can see it 5x5 on that. All right. So, all right, now let's start this all over again. My guest is Timothy Renner from Strange Familiars, and we'll start off with that. Welcome aboard, Tim. I do apologize for the technical difficulties.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Oh, just a second. Let's see. Let me pop up this, and then we'll go here. All right. So that's well, how did I do that? I just put you on reverb, and let's go here. All right, let's go this way and then turn this down, and we should be fine. Okay, now Everybody should have all that ready. All right. Now, Tim, welcome aboard. I think we've got the problems there, but here we go.
All right, so we're all ready to go now.
As far as I know, we're all lined up.
All right, hopefully everybody can hear.
Yep.
So, yeah, well, I was introducing myself. The past 5 years, I've been deep into this stuff. Jumped in with both feet.
Still doing a little bit of work on the back end. All right, so I do apologize again. We're still having the difficulties as we're going along, and for whatever reason, mine's still okay. Sounds like we've got you going, but now I can't hear myself.
Yeah, you dropped in volume for me too.
All right, let's try this out. Good. Both working, but you're quite low. That's weird. Why am I low and everybody else is? Turn up gain on my microphone and see if that works.
You came up a little bit there for me.
I've got to stand up here and do this. All right. Maybe this will work, and I have no clue why it's not. Let's see. All those up. All right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Nope. Holy cow. Let's try this out. Maybe that will be it. Can you hear me now? Or is it still...
I got you. Yeah, I can hear you good now.
Okay. All right. Let's check in here. This is just totally weird. Okay. All I have to do is get real close to the microphone, folks. Now. Okay, Tim. Hopefully for the rest of the show, I may not be able to get calls coming in, but we'll try it out and see how it works out. But we'll see what happens. Now, folks, now you hear me and the guest echo. Okay. Wow. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Now, this has got me a little discombobulated. Let's talk about a little bit what actually got you into podcasting. Was it the books that got you into podcasting, or did someone actually get you to say, hey, buddy, Tim, why don't you take some of that knowledge and do some podcasting for yourself?
Well, I wanted to do like an audio documentary of my first book, and I kept bugging all these guys from different podcasts, like, hey, help me make this. I think it'd be a good, couple episodes for your podcast. At the time, I didn't realize what I was asking, how much work I was asking somebody to do with me by asking them to do that, until finally it was Soraya from Where Did the Road Go who said, Tim, just do it yourself. Make your own podcast, do it yourself. And I thought about it for a while, and I said, well, all right, I guess I'll do that. So I started off with the first 3 episodes were kind of just that. They were kind of an audio documentary of my first book. And then we took off from there and started having other guests on, and sometimes we go and do different paranormal investigations, and we record podcasts while we're doing it and so forth. So we do a variety of stuff, but really that's how I started, and I almost didn't stick with it, but I'm really glad I did, because it took me about a year to get my legs under me with it, and now I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I absolutely love it.
Okay, So, what was the one thing that you remember as? Let me step in the microphone here. What was the one thing that you remember that really got you into getting into the paranormal? What was the first thing that really popped out?
It was honestly, even though I saw a UFO when I was a kid, that didn't like. It was so matter of fact. My mom woke me up and said, "Hey, you want to see a UFO?" And I went down and saw a UFO. Even though I had seen that, and I had seen a will-o-wisp on our property on the farm. I grew up on a farm in Maryland. I'd seen a will-o-wisp there as well, and that didn't strike me as anything super unusual. Because again, I asked my mom what it was. I pointed out to her, and I said, "What is that down there?" And she said, "Oh, it's a will-o-the-wisp." And she was very matter of fact about it. So I didn't think it was anything really unusual or paranormal. I just thought it was. I didn't know what it was. I guess I was a little kid. I was 8 years old or so, maybe 10, and I thought it had something to do with the willow trees. I thought she was saying willow-wisp, and I thought it was a natural thing. So I didn't really think anything of that. But it was really seeing Bigfoot. I remember seeing that Patterson-Gimlin film on In Search Of, and that's what really, really fired me up and really got me fascinated as a kid.
Wow. So what was your last sighting? I know that you do a lot of investigations out there in the woods. What was your last sighting that you actually could say, yeah, I saw this?
We had some really, really weird lights that we saw in the woods. There's an eye we've been investigating for a couple years now, and a friend of mine kept saying, there's eye shine up there. There's eye shine up there. He was calling it eye shine. I still to this day don't know what it is. I suspect it is eye shine, or eye glow rather, but I do not know for sure. But he kept telling me about it, and I kept going up there at night, and I couldn't see it. Well, finally I was there one night. I was with 2 other people, and I was there for about a half an hour, just long enough for my eyes to get adjusted to the light. And all of a sudden I saw, it looked like kind of a LED light in the woods, kind of whitish blue LED light. And I called the other guys over. I said, "Look, we got some lights over here." And we're observing it, and it started moving. It would move up and down, and usually in the, kind of seemed like a restricted space, like it wasn't going all over the place. And the guy who believed it was eye glow, he was there with me, and he said, he was one of the 3 guys. He said, "Oh, that's when they stand up. That's when you're seeing them. They stand up." So at this point, I don't know. And then we're looking at it through binoculars, and through binoculars, it did indeed look like 2 lights, like eyes. It appeared to be one from a distance.
Yeah.
And the thing that really got me though is that, the longer we were there, the more of them lit up. And like I said, they looked like LED lights. They didn't look like anything natural. But the other guy that was with me, he had a military-grade laser pointer. It's a 10-mile green laser pointer. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Go ahead and hit one of those lights with that laser pointer, and let's see what happens." And he did it. And now people have gotten mad at me since because they said we're shining lights in the eyes of Bigfoot, lasers in the eyes of Bigfoot, and we could be hurting them. I want to say I didn't know what these were. I just thought they were lights in the woods. I did not at this point think they were Bigfoot eye glow or anything like that. But he would hit these. It would take him a minute to zero in with this laser. He would hit these things with it. They would turn red, and then they would go out, and they'd stay out for half a minute, maybe a minute, and then they'd come back on again. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. The longer we were there, the more of them kind of lit up, and they came closer to us. What made me finally think that they were eye glow, perhaps, is they were. I should note that they were changing colors too. As we were watching, they would change from that whitish blue to kind of a green and go to maybe an orange. The only time they'd turn red, it seemed like, is when he'd hit them with those lasers, and he did it several times. Each one we saw, he'd hit with the laser, it would turn red and go out. And like I said, what finally made me think it was maybe eye glow, like my friend was suggesting, is there was a guy on Sasquatch Chronicles named Jeremy. I had him on my show on Strange Familiars recently as well. Yeah. And he described the exact same thing in Texas that I was seeing, the difference being that he saw them in the silhouette of a Bigfoot creature. So after all that, I think, part of me thinks that's maybe what they are. For a while, I was just calling them weird lights. They didn't behave like anything man-made that I know of. And I hiked back into that area. We were seeing these lights on the face of a hill, so we weren't looking through, it wasn't some kind of atmospheric thing from far away or from a highway, 10 miles away or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We weren't looking through a hill. And there's nothing back there. I mean, I went back there looking for whatever they could be. I didn't know. I looked at Christmas lights, anything, back there. But there's nothing back there. There's nothing at all. So I can't say exactly what they were, but I can tell you they're weird. They're definitely weird lights, and they behave very strangely.
Well, what kind of topography were we talking about? This area that you were in, was it was it on Indian land? Did you have a burial mound anywhere or anything like that?
Not to my knowledge. It does have a history of strangeness. What started us out investigating the area was it's a road that's now closed. It was a road, and I was asking a guy if he knew any legends, a local guy, and he started telling me about this road. And he said he used to go there when he was in high school, and they would have stones thrown at him from the woods. And as a person who's interested in Bigfoot, I very interested in that detail. And I said, well, what do you mean stones thrown at you from the wood? He said, yeah, hobos would throw stones at us from the woods. And I said, did you ever see these hobos that were there? And he said, no, we never saw them, but they would be in the woods. We could drive up there and park our cars and get stones thrown at us. So that kind of piqued my interest. And he talked about what a spooky place that area was and so forth. And that's when we started investigating the area. Since that, I did a lot of research and did turn up a lot of, we took our Bigfoot sighting about probably 2 miles from there as the crow flies, right around the time we started investigating it. And we had some other stuff that, in the area that seems like Bigfoot sightings. People reported basically unknown creatures running across the nearest kind of major road to this area and so forth. So, we may or may not be dealing with Bigfoot there, but there certainly is a lot of stuff kind of pointing to indicating that may be what's there.
Okay, so a lot of people are talking about Flannel Man.
Oh yeah,
in a bunch of I've got a lot of messages not only in from YouTube, but tell me a little bit about Flannel Man.
Oh my goodness, yeah, Flannel Man has been amazing. That Flannel Man, in a way, has become the story of Strange Familiars. I mentioned it early on because my wife had seen it. She woke up one day in the 90s. We were sleeping in her parents' house. She woke me up screaming and said there was a guy standing at our feet. He looked dressed like a lumberjack, wearing a red and black flannel shirt, kind of checked plaid flannel shirt, holding an axe, big beard, and just standing there looking at her. And interestingly, she said he kind of looked like he was caught on his face, like you shouldn't be seeing me, or I can't believe you're seeing me, or something like this. So she screams. I wake up, and of course he's not there. Years later, on the internet, I read a note somewhere in some forum that other people were seeing similar entities, this Flannel Man entity. Now, since then, it's come to my attention that John Keel wrote about it in the 70s and so forth. So it definitely was an existing thing before I ever mentioned it on Strange Familiars, but I didn't really know that at the time. I had read, Keel mentions it in Mothman Prophecies too. I'd read that book, of course, but I didn't make a note of that specific, there's like one paragraph about the Flannel Man entity, which he doesn't call by that name in Mothman Prophecies. But I mentioned it on the podcast, and I started getting people contacting me. And enough people where I said, well, we'll do a show on this because people are obviously seeing this guy. And I don't think it's the same guy. They're seeing different entities that are wearing these red and black check shirts for whatever reason. So I did one show on it, and then it just exploded. And we've done, I don't know how many Flannel Man shows now, 4 or 5, maybe 6 Flannel Man shows. And the sightings keep coming. I get reports every week. For a while there, I was getting probably 3 reports a week. Now it's probably down to 1 report a week. But just people from all over. And usually they've heard about it through the show because we're talking about it, and they can't believe other people have seen it. But it's been amazing. The journey's been amazing because it's not what I expected when I started the podcast. I did not think we were going to become the home for Flannel Man. It's just something I mentioned off the cuff because my wife had seen it, and it just exploded. And so many people have seen it, and now we're getting just very, very strange reports of other things that may or may not answer the description of gray aliens, for instance, wearing red and black checked uniforms and just all this bizarre stuff that's kind of related to these entities wearing these red and black check shirts. Some of them, sometimes people report seeing like something else, like maybe Bigfoot or something, or they'll have a ghost experience, and then they'll walk down the street and then they'll see some weird guy in red and black flannel. You know, it just happens to be there. It's very, very bizarre.
So is these located in a person's home, or is it outside in the woods, or both?
Both. The most of the sightings happen when people wake up, and it's not sleep paralysis because people are definite that they're awake. They're awake, they're moving. A lot of times they'll go to the kitchen, get a glass of water, come back, and they'll see this entity. Or they'll be awake, you know, they're not frozen, they're not like locked like you are in sleep paralysis. They're up and moving, and they'll see this character. I had one woman on the show, she and her daughter saw it at the exact same time in their house. So somehow the mom woke up, saw it, screamed, heard her daughter screaming, and then they she asked her daughter what she saw, and they described the same thing. So most of the sightings are happening in people's homes, but I've gotten some really neat ones outside. I had a girl tell me a story when she was really little. She said it was a Halloween night, and she was going through the woods, and she came upon this lumberjack-looking guy, big beard, and she said, but he wasn't right. He was taller than anybody she'd ever seen, and he wouldn't talk. She said she actually pulled on his beard because she thought he was a Halloween, out for Halloween or something.
Oh, so this is actually something you could touch.
A lot of people have touched them or been touched by them. Yeah, it's more than a ghost, whatever it is. So this guy pressed pumpkin seeds into her hand and let her hand to the ground, and she felt like he was telling her to plant the pumpkin seeds. So that was a pretty neat one. But yeah, they're all over the place, and some people get, like, she got a very good feeling from them. Some people do not get good feelings at all from them. Some people get very, very, very negative feelings from them, and some mostly I think people are just very neutral about it. They're shocked to see them, especially in their house, because it's somebody shouldn't be there, but they don't get a particularly, other than being shocked and scared because it's somebody who shouldn't be there, they don't get a particularly, nasty vibe from the guy. But some do. Some have had some very, very kind of negative experiences with them.
So what part of the country is this located? Or do you get more reports from the Northeast, Southwest, or is it all over the world that you're getting these reports?
I'm getting reports from all over the world, at least so far from Europe and the United States and Canada. However, the most reports seem to come from areas that had lumberjack camps, logging camps. Now, I don't know if that's just a coincidence or not, but that's so far the most of the reports come from areas that either currently have or did at one time have lumberjack camps.
Okay, so what's the most outrageous description that you have heard of a flannel man?
It's a report. It hasn't aired on the show yet, but it's, like I said, it's a report that seems to describe tall, lanky, kind of gray aliens that are in skin-tight suits that just happen to be this red and black check pattern on it. I mean, that's just pretty wacky. Like, and that'll air in an upcoming show.
Well, one of my followers, a fellow podcaster, she's wanting to know what parts of Canada and how long have the sightings been going on?
The oldest I've found reference to, now it's very, very difficult to look this up because what do you look up? Like, if you type in man in plaid or something, you're going to get a million hits on that. But the oldest one where it seems to be something truly bizarre and paranormal that goes along with it is there was a mining disaster in Kentucky in the 40s. And the miners reported that a door opened up in the side of the wall. They were trapped in there, and a guy walked out dressed like a lumberjack, they said, or I think they said a telephone lineman in the article. Same difference, though. They said he was wearing a red and black plaid shirt and jeans. He comes out of the side of the wall and says tells the miners, don't worry, you will be rescued. It'll be okay. Walks back through the wall, through this door, and then they can't get to this door. They tried to look, for this door he walked through. They can't find it. And they were indeed rescued then. So that was from the 40s. I think I might have tracked down a ghost story earlier than that, maybe the early 1900s, where they mentioned the ghost was in Plaid or something. But the one that for sure that seems to meet the description most is that mining disaster one in the 40s.
So you mentioned that some people had good feelings from this flannel man, but have you run into any negative stories from this? Yeah.
I had some people who, one woman who saw it said it had red glowing eyes, and she just she was not happy with it at all. She was very disturbing to her as a child. It appeared in her doorway, I believe. And like I said, the woman who she and her daughter saw it, she was not happy. She said it had a very, very sinister grin when he looked at her. She did not get a good feeling at all from it, and that it upset her indeed. And I'm trying to think if there's been others. Those are the two that pop out, that stick out for me right now as far as kind of negative ones. The majority, like I said, have been very kind of neutral,
Okay. Well, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about a little bit about one of your books. What was the last book that you read or wrote about? Was it
my most recent book is called Don't Look Behind You.
Oh, that's an ominous
one. It's kind of a continuation of my first book, where I talk about this area of Toad Road in York County, Pennsylvania, where I live. And but this book, it's a combination of things. It's a lot of witness reports that I've gotten since writing the first book, and then it's also my own experiences. In the first book, I didn't write about any of my own experiences. In this one, my own experiences that I've had while investigating the area and some other local areas as well.
Well, tell us a little bit about Toad Road. I looked up a little bit about it, but I'm sure a lot of my listeners probably have not heard about Toad Road.
Yeah, it's there was a kind of a B horror movie made about it in recent years, sometime in the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. And there's a legend associated with it that's in the Weird USA books and so forth. That's it's complete nonsense. And in fact, I had written an article myself for Weird USA, and they asked me if I could take the pictures for my article, which was not about Toad Road. My article was about another area in York County. And they asked me if I could take the pictures for the Toad Road article as well. And I said I would. And I said, but please let me read that before you publish it, because there's a lot of nonsense out there. And lo and behold, they published the article with or my photos rather, with the article that's just, it's just nonsense. It's a story about a insane asylum that burnt down, and supposedly the people escaped from the asylum and they ran through the woods, and those that weren't killed in the fire were killed by locals in the woods around the insane asylum and so forth. And it didn't take me long at all to prove that wrong. My father-in-law he does genealogy, and he has maps of the area going back to the 1700s. And I simply looked on the maps and found no building in the area, this Toad Road area, that could match the description of an insane asylum. In fact, the only building that was ever along Toad Road was a hunting cabin, which probably was washed away by one of the floods. It's built. This road is built right along the Cador's Creek, which is major navigable water out of York, and it goes up to meet the Susquehanna River. So not only was there no building to meet that description, there's never been an insane asylum anywhere in York County, Pennsylvania, freestanding. It was originally mental patients would have been at the almshouse, and then after that they would have been taken to York Hospital, where they still are today, once York Hospital was built. So we've never had a freestanding insane asylum. So it's a story based on complete nonsense. And so it goes. There were 7 gates built to keep people away from the ruins of this asylum. I can tell you there are not 7 gates. I heard someone on a Dogman show recently claim that he had been through 3 gates and no one's ever made it past the 4th or 5th gate or something like this. I don't know where he is. There's only one gate there. It's an old farm gate. There's no gate. Someone's a little confused. There's never been more than one gate there. There was an old gate outside a doctor's property in the 70s, and I think that's how kind of the legend stuck. There was a doctor that lived at the end of the road, who was in some of the legends he's been turned into this mad doctor, which again is nonsense. He was a veteran of both world wars. He did a lot of work for the poor and aged folks in the area. He does not seem to be this mad doctor that these ghost stories portray him as. He was just a doctor. And
so how did one gate turn into 7?
Well, there is another local legend about 7 gates of hell, and actually you can find it all over the country. There's a lot of these 7 gates of hell legends all over the country. Originally, it was not locally. It was not assigned to Toad Road. This is a post-internet thing where people came up with this burning insane asylum legend and put the 7 gates of hell there. It was originally associated with a cemetery in York called Prospect Hill Cemetery, or another area in York known as Hex Hollow. And it had to do. There weren't 7 gates at either of those places either. It had to do with sort of symbolic gates and the way you drove through either the cemetery or drove or walked or rode a horse through the cemetery or the hollow. You would make these circuitous kind of routes, and each loop you did would open another symbolic gate, and things were supposed to get spookier with each passing loop you did through the area. So this became, I think because of that one gate, that kind of stuck to the area of Toad Road, and this whole 7-gate legend kind of stuck as well. But it's based on somebody made up a story, basically. It sounds like it's a B movie, a horror movie kind of story.
It could have like Germanic aspects to it. I know there's a lot of German tales that moved over to my area. They called jack tales, but could it be something like was handed down from person to person?
Well, originally people were going up there to that gate. So I think, they'd park outside that doctor's gate if they wanted to have a spooky experience. So I think that, that's part of what it is. The local folklore, that's why I like talking to people who are like in their 40s and older. About that, because they haven't been influenced by the internet so much. They'll tell you other stuff that happened up there. And the interesting thing is, like, a lot of spooky stuff does happen there. A lot of, I've collected a lot of reports, but none of it has to do with ghosts of insane asylum people. A lot of it sounds like cryptid phenomenon. And that's what I started noticing when I really started digging in. They're talking about things peeking from trees and red eyes in the woods and screams. The thing I get reported most often is screams up there, screams from the woods. People going lost and having something that follows them or paces them through the woods there. Things like that. Things that if you know about cryptids, you go, oh, this sounds like cryptid stuff. This doesn't sound like ghost stuff at all.
So have you actually had a actual missing person that was linked to this phenomenon?
There's a missing person in the area. It's a woman in her 60s. I don't name names for missing people because I think it's kind of, if they're still missing, I think it's kind of disrespectful to the family to sit here and for me to say, oh yeah, she's missing and it's connected to this paranormal stuff when I don't know. I don't know why she's missing, so I don't name names. But she's a woman in her 60s, very close to the area, has gone missing in the early mid 2000s. She went missing and she's never been seen again. She just disappeared.
Okay. Now I know that when I talked to you last time on the phone, you mentioned Loop Guru. So tell us a little bit about your fascination, your attraction to Loop Guru.
Oh my goodness! I don't know if that was me. I do have some werewolf stuff, but
well, it may or not. But anyway,
I can tell you. Well, I can tell you there was in the same area. So this road leads like 3 miles through the woods. It was washed out in Hurricane Agnes, 1972, and it was closed down after that. And what it was the old tow path for the Cador's Creek. So these barges they'd bring up out of York, some of the parts of the creek, you know, they needed to be towed through. They weren't deep enough to run these barges on. So they had this tow path by the creek, and they were bringing materials up to a thing called Cador's Furnace, which is a big iron forge up at the end of it. And that's where they made cannons and cannonballs for the Revolutionary War. It's a really impressive structure, still standing up there. Well, it's been rebuilt a couple times, I think, but it's a, you know, kind of historical landmark. It's got ghost stories and stuff associated with it. But in 2016, in the fall of 2016, someone saw what they described as a bipedal hyena type dogman up there. And Stan Gordon, actually a researcher from Western Pennsylvania, he gave me the sighting. And they didn't have too much information other than it was this big kind of, you know, hyena type dogman. And interestingly enough, I took a picture of something. It's on the back cover of my first book. Again, I don't claim that it's anything. I didn't know that I was taking a picture of it when I saw it. It's not going to convince any skeptic that it's anything, but a lot of people look at it and they tell me it looks like some kind of, you know, dogman type creature. I don't know. It's just, I can only tell you I didn't know I was photographing it when I took the picture. And then when I came back to try to duplicate the picture, I couldn't duplicate it. So whatever it was there wasn't there when I came back. But I don't know what it was. I can't make any claims on that photo. But it's a weird photo that a lot of people like. It's, like I said, it's on the back of my first book.
So have you come across as any recent werewolf kind of not per se what you've gathered yourself as you went out and, you know, throughout the woods and stuff, but have you come across some really good smack you in the face kind of evidence that really said, oh my, I've got something right here?
There's it's an ongoing investigation. It's just south of me in Maryland that the witness first contacted me and said she saw a big black wolf, and like really, really big, you know, 4 foot, 5 foot at the shoulder kind of thing. And she was very certain it was bipedal. She said it looked like a wolf, had a tail, you know, ears on the top of its head. But she works with the public, and she started asking her neighbors about stuff. And all of her neighbors reported stuff that sounds like Bigfoot. They're reporting specifically Bigfoot. Her husband saw something outside of their house. It crossed in front of their deck, or he could see it above the deck. And I went out there and measured. That was like 8 foot high. And he said that was gray. Whatever he saw was gray and hair covered and real quick. But that's so I don't know if, you know, if we're talking a werewolf with what she saw, but it is a, you know, a wolf-like creature. That's been the band. She's a very, very credible witness. Very, very, she's excellent. One of the best witnesses I've ever dealt with, and completely fearless about asking our neighbors what they've seen. So she's got me a lot of great reports in the same area. So again, yeah, I don't know if we're dealing with a, you know, dogman werewolf type of things there or not, but she definitely reported, you know, at least a quadrupedal, very, very large wolf.
Well, I just saw an interesting question popped up in the YouTube chat. Is there a difference between a loup-garou and a dogman / werewolf? Is there a difference, or are they one and the same?
Well, that's a matter of opinion. I mean, I think a lot of the dogman people think that they're natural creatures somehow. I cannot believe that. I think whatever we're calling dogman now is the same thing they were calling werewolves in folklore, you know, 200, 300, 400 years ago, whatever it is. And I don't think it's a natural creature. There's nothing in the fossil record that's convinced me that it's a natural creature. I'm not saying that it's not physical, that people don't see it. I just think there's something else to it. There's some kind of paranormal or supernatural element to it. So I think it's all probably the same, you know, in the same thing that people are seeing. It's just we used to call them werewolves and now we call them dogmen, but I certainly could be wrong.
Well, there's a lot of discussion that's happening outside of the paranormal realm where they're doing DNA manipulation and this, that, and the other. Could there be a black ops project out there producing these type of werewolf sightings?
I've often wondered that with all these kind of chimera creatures, if there's not, because I've heard these stories and you never know how true they are about these secret bases with these, where they're developing these half-man, whatever chimera creatures. And it seems like, the military's always ahead of us with their technology. So maybe it's possible. But I also look back in folklore and, like I said, we've been reporting things that meet this description, these upright things with wolf heads for a long, long time. So I tend to fall back on that just because I'm a folklore guy. I really like folklore. And I think a lot of people in the sort of cryptozoology community use folklore as some kind of an insult. Oh, that's just folklore. But to me, folklore was probably the cryptid reports of the day. It's changed over time because it's a big, it's whispering down the lane. Things will get more exaggerated and the elements of other stories will creep in and stuff. That's just part of the folk process. But there's enough about these things that are similar that's convinced me that whatever they were talking about in these old folklore reports are probably the same thing we're talking about today when we talk about these various things, whether it's Dogman or Bigfoot or whatever.
Okay, so first question. One of the YouTube followers is saying, what is a Wendigo?
Well, that's sort of outside of my area of expertise. Some people think it's, another form of Bigfoot. I've heard, I think, was it Duke from World Bigfoot Radio? He considers it, I think he says a Gugway is the same thing. I could be wrong. Sorry, Duke, if I got that wrong. And other people claim these Wendigos are, more kind of almost like the rake-like creatures. They're real skinny and pale and they describe something else. So I guess I'd have to know exactly what are we talking about when we talk about Wendigo. I mean, I've seen some images of them with bones, like deer bones. They're kind of anthropomorphic, sort of. They look like zombie deer or something. So I don't, I'm not familiar enough with all of the legends to make a call. But I think in most cases, probably it has something to do with the Bigfoot legend. But I know I don't have any. I seem like I'm backing away from stuff. That's because I don't have any hard answers on this stuff. I try to keep my own mind open, so I don't come down with any hard decisions on this.
Well, let's see. What are they asking? Okay, for let's switch back to the werewolf / Bigfoot sightings that you've had personally. Have you had any smells, anything like that you go along with your sightings? A lot of people say, in Florida, they call them the stinky ape. Have you come across that?
Yeah, twice. And one had nothing to do with the sighting, but it was a creepy day. It was an area that it wasn't way far out in the wilderness. It was in a local park, and I came across an area of stacked quartz stones one day. They were just stacked up at a trailhead, and I was, oh, that's interesting. And I changed the stack and happened to come back a few days later, and it was changed again. And I said, oh, well, somebody's doing this, somebody else is doing this. So I changed them again, and it was the closest park to my house, so I was there a lot. So I happened to come back again for a hike, maybe a week later, and it was changed again. So it's aha, and at this point, I'm not thinking it's anything other than a person.
Okay. Another question is, has Tim heard of the Maine wolf, and could this be the werewolf?
I have not heard of that, so I can't weigh in.
Okay, I'm assuming it's part of Maine, the state, Maine wolf. So, any thoughts on the giants? That's another question. The giants.
Yeah, I mean, those are super rare. The reports of those are super, super rare. But there's some really, really compelling reports out there. With the they leave 4-toe tracks, I believe. Sometimes they have that outrigger toe. They call it on the side. Really, really massive, absolutely huge tracks. Very, very interesting. There's a lot of folklore on giants. There's a lot of reports in the old days of people talking about them. So I have to think there's something to it. Again, I don't know that there's a breeding population of natural giants out there, but I think somehow they're here, you know.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I personally love about paranormal is Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings. And I have actually looked at maps of sightings over a chronological mapping of both and laid them on top of each other, both
Yep.
UFO and Bigfoot. Have you seen those two sightings correlate with each other?
Absolutely. I joke around and I say, if you find me a Bigfoot sighting in Pennsylvania, I'll find you a UFO sighting within the few days in the same area. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's true enough, where there are many examples of it. I just wrote a chapter in my forthcoming book, it'll be out later this year, writing with Josh Cutchin. It's called Where the Footprints End. And I document so many cases of Bigfoot seen together with UFOs, or roughly at the same time, maybe within a day or so, usually the same day, often at the same time, that there's no question in my mind that there's some correlation between the two.
Okay. Well, we're getting right at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. What I'm going to do is going to take a little bit of a break here and let Tim take a break. And I'm going to try to work on this microphone issue in the meantime. But I'm going to go ahead and start the commercial music for a little bit. Take about a 5-minute break there, Tim, if you don't mind. Are you ready for another hour?
Sure thing.
Okay. Go ahead and take your break, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, folks.
Did you know that medical expenses are the largest cause of bankruptcy in the United States? Even for people who have major medical insurance. And that leads me to the next point. Most people's health insurance coverage is not enough to cover their treatment costs. That's why you and your family need a living benefits plan through Manhattan Life. Just think, no medical exam required, and we're not talking about accident insurance. We're talking about life insurance protection. Furthermore, you can quote yourself on your own time if you go to imdarkwaters.com and click the Manhattan Life Insurance link today. That's right. Go to imdarkwaters.com and click the Manhattan Life Insurance link today.
folks. Hopefully I've done something or not done something. Let's see if we come back. Tim, are you still with me, sir?
I'm here.
Oh, right, hold on just a second. Let's see if everything's going. I did some stuff in the background while I was messing around with the feeds. Hopefully we can get this going here. Okay, now folks, can you hear me okay in the chat room? Now, anyway, I guess we have it showing that I'm showing up on the actual radio, so here we go. Okay, folks, we're back with Chasing the Truth from the Dark Waters radio channel, and my guest tonight is Timothy Renner. He's from StrangeFamiliars.com, and he has written 4 books about the paranormal, and we just finished our first hour with him, and he was kind enough to stay on board while I was messing around with a little bit of technical issues in the background. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about how to get a hold of you, just to start off the top of the hour.
Sure. StrangeFamiliars.com. That's all that contact information goes to me right there. So that's probably the best, easiest place for people to go to find me. If you want my books, you can look up Timothy Renner on Amazon. People question sometimes if it's okay to buy from Amazon. It's okay by me. They're very fair with the split on the independent author books. So if you prefer to get them from Amazon, you can get them from Amazon. I know a lot of people have Prime. But if you want to get them directly from me, I have copies. You can get signed copies directly from me.
All right. Well, just a little bit of housekeeping, folks. I don't think I'll be able to take phone calls tonight. Unfortunately, I'm sorry about that, Tim. Just with what I had to do with the setup, I'm not able to add another link in for tonight. So I am taking live chat over on YouTube. If you got questions, just roll into that live chat on YouTube and send them that way. And first question right off the bat, does Tim know anything about the Hat Man, especially the short one?
The short one. I've gotten reports of the tall one. I haven't gotten reports of the short one. He's one of these, what I like to call, and I borrowed this phrase from John Keel, these like bedroom invaders, they call them. These guys that just kind of seem to show up in people's houses and so forth. And he seems to be one of them. But other than that, I wish I knew what they were. I wish I knew what Flannel Man was. I wish I knew what all these things were so I could give people definite answers. But that's part of it. Part of it is the mystery, and I'm in love with the mystery.
Well, with the Flannel Man, from what you have told me about it on this radio show, plus what I've researched in the background, could Flannel Man be like a shadow person?
It could be, an expression of the same thing. It really could. It seems to. I mean, obviously, he's not comprised of shadow. I've not yet received that's the thing. I've been getting weird combinations where I've even gotten a report of something which it sounded like a Bigfoot and it kind of acted like a Bigfoot, but the person looked in their rearview mirror and they said all they could see was red and black flannel. So it's really, really bizarre, like the combinations that are coming up. So I will not be surprised if I get some sort of shadow person Flannel Man combination, mashup at some point. But it could certainly be an expression of the same kind of thing. Okay.
There's a couple questions about I may butcher the pronunciation of this. An Albert Witch.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What is it? I've got questions about. Please ask about the Albert Witch from Minifist.
So that is a local cryptid. That is a lot of people have said they're a little Bigfoot, but they're not. We've never had a report of one with an adult Bigfoot, and they're not built like Bigfoot. They're very skinny. They're 3 to 4 feet high, usually reported. Very skinny, hair-covered things. They are reported along the Susquehanna River most of the time, and they seem to be some kind of another one of these like little cryptids. They've been here a long time. I've gotten reports back from the 1880s. There's a report in a book of folklore nearby that talks about they don't call him Albatwitch by name. Albatwitch is a German name. It's the Pennsylvania Dutch name for whatever these are. But they were on the shields of the Susquehannock Indians when the Europeans got here and so forth. So, it's just it's one of these kind of local cryptids that we have here. It's probably in the same category as these other, what they call little people that appear elsewhere in the country. I was about
ready to ask you about that. The little people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're supposed to be a whistle. Sometimes they're said to whistle and draw people out into the woods, and from which they never return. And I found a local book of folklore that said there's what they call the Albatwitch welcome whistle, which certain hunters are supposed to know. I've never heard it myself. I'd like a hunter to teach it to me. But supposedly, if you learn this whistle, you can call them out when you go into the woods. You do this welcome whistle, and the creatures are whistled back.
So, when you come across these sightings of whatever the cryptid is, have you come across any kind of dark magic, black magic, tribal magic in this folklorish kind of rabbit hole you've been going down?
Not specifically. I'm trying to think if there's any cases of it that are specifically linked to that. I've had some instances where I've uncovered, for instance, people doing spiritualism, automatic writing and stuff in the same area. Like there's an 8 square mile area that I do a lot of research in southern York County, and in that area there was people doing automatic writing, and they were spirit contact and stuff. But it's not necessarily directly related, I don't think, to the other sightings. It's kind of like another weird thing that's happening there.
So have you found any like totem poles or anything like that in the areas that you went Bigfoot and cryptid hunting?
No, I find skulls. Find a lot of skulls, but other than that, one of them I found mounted in a tree, like impaled on a tree branch, about eye level. But other than that, nothing necessarily that sticks out.
Okay, so back to this Hat Man thing. How much of this can be contributed to just say sleep paralysis? One of the hats that I wore before I started podcasting was I was a director over a bunch of sleep labs, and sleep paralysis can give you some rather wild dreams.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it's related to sleep paralysis. I really do. I think I don't think sleep paralysis explains the paranormal. My friend Josh has a great saying. He says, "Don't confuse the keyhole with the room," by which he means the keyhole is sleep paralysis. It's just one way in to this weird stuff with the paranormal. So it's I think, yes, sleep paralysis can sometimes be responsible for this, but I think it's also getting us glimpses of the paranormal when it does happen.
So, do you normally group together Dogman reports with your Bigfoot sightings or any of that kind of nature, or do you separate them out? Yeah, and how you
I generally separate them out. If people are sure, if they're sure what they saw and they said that there's ears on top and it had a snout or it had a tail or something, I will separate it out and kind of treat them as separate sightings. Sometimes I think. I've had a couple reports where I thought like maybe because Dogman's kind of hot right now. It's the big scary one, and I thought maybe what they saw was not Dogman. Maybe they saw a little Bigfoot or some other kind of thing, and they just kind of wanted it to be Dogman, so they reported it as a Dogman. But I can't say for sure. In the end, I have to trust what the witness says. If they're describing ears on top and it's a snout, like I said, I'll go ahead and put that in the Dogman category.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed on a lot of blog spots and some popular TV shows, which I'm not going to name right now, have you found like tracks and stuff that you've actually done castings of?
I have. So I think there's this idea, probably because of TV shows, that if you go looking for Bigfoot, like there's just tracks everywhere, and you'll find these tracks, and you'll be getting casts all the time. A castable track is a very, very rare thing. And I found what I call maybe tracks and nothing that's ever been like castable, very shallow and things that I think are probably tracks because of the situations I found them in, but which will never convince. They won't convince other Bigfoot people, much less another skeptic. So I haven't found myself any like clear castable tracks.
Have you found any kind of material that you can contribute to a Bigfoot or other cryptid?
Other than what I think were things possibly left for me, either like cairns or I believe those skulls, because I find them on almost, like probably better than 50% of the Bigfoot investigations I go on. I will find skulls that seem to be left out in the open, not hidden. I'm not crawling around through bushes or anything looking for them. They seem to be left in prominent places. So other than something like that, I've not found hair, or I did find what I thought might have been scat one day, but I can't be sure. I grew up on a farm. It wasn't a horse or cow. It was a big pile. That's all I can tell you. And it had bugs in it, but I did not take samples of it or anything. I wouldn't know where to send them.
So from your research, have you found out if Bigfoot is a migratory creature? Do they move from place to place, or do they just find a home and stay there?
That's a big question. My big question, especially in Pennsylvania and specifically in south central Pennsylvania where I am, I get a lot of sightings. I get a lot of sightings from people, and we do not have a lot of wilderness here. So my question is, where are they going and where do they come from? And that's borrowed from another researcher out in the western part of the state, Brian Seach, but it's good. It's a good question. I get sightings all times of year, so that they're if they're migratory, I can't figure out the migratory pattern, and I get them in places of the county, both as crazy as what seems to be suburban neighborhoods that have some woods near them and by them, to places that are pretty far out, like have a lot of trees and along the Appalachian Trail and stuff.
Okay, so what would be a typical cryptid diet like Bigfoot? What would be on the Bigfoot menu?
If they're eaten, you mean?
Yeah, if they're eaten, yes. If they're eaten.
I think deer. I think deer is number one. If just based on the number of skulls I find, if they're eaten. If they are like us and they eat, they need to eat the way we do, then I think deer is probably number one for them.
Okay. Well, one of my friends that I talked Bigfoot with, D. Doss, we talked about how the Bigfoot ages. Have you seen young Bigfoot, older Bigfoot, Bigfoot that have been crippled or anything like that, or any kind of notion that would give you pause to think, well, wait a minute, is this an older Bigfoot I'm looking at, or a younger one, or what?
We get a lot of reports of white ones, white and gray ones. So many, in fact, that I wonder, I don't think they could be albinism because there's too many. So does that point to them being older? Maybe. I went gray. I used to have black hair. I don't anymore. It's silver now. Maybe. Or I have also had a thought in regards to the and this ties back to the migration question, that perhaps whatever these things are, they have a different lifespan than us, and maybe what people are seeing, because I've got reports in the area that go back to the 1880s and then on up to the 2010s, and specifically talking about, like I said, that 8 square mile area. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's fewer of them than we think, and maybe they live a lot longer than we do, and that might explain why people are seeing them over the course of many hundreds of years.
So the other question was, have you seen any evidence of any of these Bigfoot being crippled?
No, I've seen weird. In the 70s especially, we had 3-toed tracks here. A lot of the tracks we were getting were 3-toed, and they look kind of messed up. They look like what's called syndactyly. It's when your toes are kind of forged together. So it could be 5 toes like that appear as 3. The problem with that is both feet look the same, and usually syndactyly doesn't express on both feet of a creature. So what are we dealing with when we're talking about something with 3 toes? It's very, very bizarre, but it's definitely and these tracks there were 2 miles of these tracks at some point that went, across a creek and through fields and so forth. There were some 2,000 different footprints. I think they had about a 5-foot stride. So there was no mistaking that it was something odd, something very big, something very heavy, and but very weird. 3 toes. It does not look like a, could it have been some sort of cripple or birth defect? Possibly could have been. It definitely didn't look like a natural, normal foot.
Okay. From the YouTube chat over on Dark Waters YouTube channel, Manifest says, Sean, can you ask about any violent encounters with cryptids?
Yeah. One of the things that really got me on the idea that it was cryptids out at Toad Road and not anything else was a report I found from 1974 of a man who was attacked by what he called a hairy monster. And it took me a long time to track this guy down. I was able to. He does not have an internet presence. I found an old address in a phone book, and I took a shot, and I wrote him a letter. And I asked him to call me or write me back. And I got about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the guy. And he asked me what I wanted to talk about, and I told him I wanted to talk about this newspaper article that mentioned him. And he, over the course of probably about 6 months, he told me the story. He did not like talking about it. I am not a psychologist, but it seems like he had PTSD. His girlfriend didn't like when I talked to him about it. He said he'd be up with nightmares for 2 weeks afterwards. So she didn't want him talking to me about it. But he described this experience in the newspaper. It said he ran into a hairy monster, or he was attacked by a hairy monster and was sent to the hospital with scratches on his face. He told me the whole story, or most of the story. And before at this point, he won't return my calls. He's done talking about it, I think, and I don't want to torture the guy and keep calling him. But he said what happened was he drove to the area. His car would not start. He could not get his car to start. He was there for several hours, about 4 a.m. He got out of his car, and he was very scared. While he was there, something kept brushing up against his car. He never saw what was brushing up against his car. And he took off running. And he said, in his words, I ran into a monster. He never mentioned Bigfoot until I asked him, I said, do you think it could be Bigfoot? And he got very quiet, and he said, oh, you know what? Maybe it was Bigfoot. Maybe that was it. But until that point, he had considered that he ran into a monster, and this thing beat him to the ground. It sent him to the hospital with a head injury. It was much more than a quick hospital stay for scratches on his face. That was reported in the paper. He was in the hospital for a week. He was really brutalized by this thing. He said he ran directly into it, and it just beat him up. It just beat him down. And he was taken to the hospital. Like I said, the police came and retrieved his car. The door was open on his car, so something or someone with hands had opened the door. The car started fine for the police, no problem, started right up. They were able to drive it away. And the police report, he said that they told him that he ran into a man wearing skins, and he said, no way. This is way bigger than any man I've ever seen. There's no way it was a man wearing skins. And then I believe the final police report, he said they put down that he ran into a cow, and this guy lived on a dairy farm. He said, I know what cows are. I did not run into a cow. So that was a very, very aggressive report that I took in that area, Toad Road. So yeah, I've taken a couple of them.
So have you heard of anybody reporting that they actually shot at a Bigfoot or Dogman or anything like that?
Not nearby. Not yet. So I've heard other reports in other parts of the country, but nobody nearby.
Okay. Here's one question from the chat room. What is Tim's favorite cryptid and why? And what does he think Bigfoot is? Oh, what does he think Bigfoot is? I'm sorry, I just had to reread that.
So I'm going to go with Bigfoot. Bigfoot is absolutely my favorite. I think there's so much to this wild man archetype in the way that UFOs have changed over time, but have always been with us. This wild man as well. It's seems like it's gotten wilder for us recently. The Bigfoot reports are real wild. It seems to be like a very, very wild man. But if you go back to the 1800s, you still have wild men. You still have these reports, these hair-covered things, but they don't seem to be maybe quite as wild as they are now. The phenomena kind of changes a little bit over time. It's very, very interesting. I think the wild man has been with us since the beginning of time. It always has lived in the woods next to us. What it is, I think it's more than a gorilla. That's all I can tell you. I do not think it's just an undiscovered gorilla. It's something much more than that. There's something way weirder about it. It shows up, like we were saying, it shows up with UFOs. It shows up with other strange lights. There are reports of it holding glowing globes. There are reports of it in conjunction with big cat sightings and so forth. There's so much weirdness associated with the creature that is not associated with, say, mountain gorillas, for instance, that I'm just convinced it is something far, far stranger than an undiscovered gorilla. I believe it's an expression of the wild man archetype. I also have to say that I believe it's completely real, that people are seeing it. It's solid. It's as solid as the desk in front of me now, and it leaves footprints. So when I say that I don't think it's a gorilla, I'm not saying I think it's a ghost or some kind of illusion or anything. Or it's a real thing that people are seeing. I absolutely believe them. I've talked to way too many credible witnesses that are absolutely convincing in what they tell me, but they also tell me some weird stuff that goes along with it that is confirmed by many, many other reports.
Well, let's get into why Bigfoot is so elusive. Do they have some sort of cloaking ability, or is it more of a spiritual thing, or magic, or some sort of weird tech we don't know of, since a lot of UFOs are around these sightings?
I mean, it could be all of the above. Until we can prove it one way or another, it's all science fiction, I suppose. But I can tell you that, just in Pennsylvania, we've gotten reports of the creatures doing the what they call the kind of the predator thing, where they seem to disappear in front of people's eyes and become blurry, look like the predator from the movies. People have reported them disappearing on one side of the road and reappearing on the other. People have reported them just completely just blinking out of sight. So they must have something. Now, I don't think it's technology. I don't think that Bigfoot have a box with buttons they're pushing to make themselves disappear or something. But they either have an ability that makes them able to do this, or they have a way to confuse us, to confuse our what we're seeing, or confuse our minds and allow them to appear to do these things.
Okay, another question. I guess it's similar to the ones that we just asked about UFOs. Do you have any Men in Black stories?
There's a woman called me and she told me that she used to go to Toad Road when it was open, when it was a road, and she was telling me some scary stories about the place. And she said there was a guy that was in a black car that would chase them down the road sometimes. That was there. So that's kind of and I asked her, was it like and she's like, this is a big black old car, and she couldn't describe the guy. So, but just because of the area it's in, I thought, it kind of sounds Man in Blackish. She also told me about a toad man that lived there, which was new to me. But I found some old reports which seemed to not confirm it, but they seem to be talking about similar things in the area. But in any case, I've often wondered if these guys that kind of show up and sometimes intimidate Bigfoot witnesses, and sometimes they're described as wearing flannel, by the way, if they're not an expression of the Man in Black, if they're not the sort of Bigfoot version of the Man in Black phenomenon. But I haven't collected any Man in Black reports myself. I would like to get some. I definitely want to do a show on that upcoming. So we'll see.
Looks like we're getting into the urban legends in the chat room. One of the questions is, do you have any black-eyed kid stories?
Again, nothing local. Nothing. Nothing I've investigated. I've talked to David Weatherly, who's the guy for that. He's written a book on it literally, and he's just gotten so many reports. But I've looked around for him, but I haven't been able to find any locally. Much to my daughter's chagrin, she's very, very interested in black-eyed kids. She always wants me to find. She's find the black-eyed kids. You need legends of black-eyed kids, but I have not gotten any yet.
No black-eyed kids. I went down that rabbit hole for about 6 months, and I was like, it sounds like an urban legend to me. At the end of my 6 month jump into that little hole there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I mean, again, there's enough reports of them that it just makes me wonder. And I did track down a Bigfoot witness. He was having ongoing Bigfoot. Now, this wasn't my witness. This is just someone I read about in a book who was having ongoing Bigfoot activity around his cabin, and told a story about one night he got a knock on the door, and he opened it up, and there was these two kids out there, and they told this cockamamie story about breaking down 7 miles away, but their clothes weren't dirty. They were wearing brand new clothes. And the guy goes through this whole story, and at the end he says, but I can't remember their faces. I can't remember what their faces or their eyes look like. So that's always made me wonder if and that was from 73 or 74. So I made me wonder if he was having maybe an early black-eyed kid experience. But again, that's not a case I investigated my own. It's just one I ran across.
Oh, here's a question I've asked a couple of guests of mine. What was the best cryptid story you heard, and then you found out it was BS after you started getting into it?
Oh my goodness. Geez. Well, I don't know that it was BS. I think it was mistaken. I think it was a very, very eager witness who was mistaken in what she saw. But I did an investigation. It was someone who told me she was having repeat Dogman sightings, and I just did not find anything that pointed as such. But while we were investigating the area, a huge German Shepherd came running up to us, and I often wondered if she had mistaken, what she saw for that. But I can't say for sure. And I will say that this particular witness got mad at me for saying that, because she believes entirely of what she saw is what she said she saw. So I should not, I shouldn't be casting aspersions on that. But I've wondered a couple times with witnesses if they saw 100% what they thought they saw, necessarily, just because of the information they've given has been kind of like, well, I'm not sure how for instance, this Dogman sightings were around apartment buildings, and there were people there constantly. People always at these apartments. They were up all hours of the night. The several times I went there at night to investigate, there were people up, partying and so forth, and I just couldn't understand how they were not being seen by anybody else. But I don't think they were necessarily trying to hoax me or anything. I think it's just, maybe, we just don't agree with what she saw, maybe.
Oh, okay. All right. How about crop circles? I just recently saw the first crop circle of the year actually was put in the news here in the last couple of days. Do you know anything about crop circles around these Bigfoot?
Well, I haven't seen any. We had a sort of a landing here in the 1970s during a Bigfoot flap. It's in Gatchellville, Pennsylvania, which it wasn't necessarily a crop circle, but it burned part of the field, and there was a triangle left in the field. And while not directly associated with Bigfoot, it was in the same area that we were having like a bunch of Bigfoot sightings at the same time. The most interesting thing to me about crop circles is that several people have come forward and said they make them, that they physically make them. They're the ones that do it. But what's really, really interesting about that is they say while they're out there in those fields making those crop circles, they will see and experience very, very weird stuff. So while they're doing it, they're seeing orbs and weird lights and having just weird stuff go off around them, which is a very, very interesting aspect of the phenomenon, I think.
All right, I keep seeing one guy, Richard, in the YouTube chat room. He keeps saying grinning man. Do you know any stories about a grinning man?
Well, he's another one of these guys that seems to just show up out of nowhere. I think. I mean, I kind of put him in the same category as the Hat Man kind of thing. Just a very, very sinister thing that people are seeing and definitely don't get a good feeling from him. I often wondered if that the Flannel Man thing where the woman and her daughter saw it at the same time. She very specifically said he had a kind of an evil grin, and I often wondered if this was the same, the same expression of the same kind of thing. She just saw a grinning man in flannel. I believe, now I haven't written anything about this or really researched it, but I believe the grinning man, like the grin, there's something that's like too big or unnatural or something about it. Something looks off about the grin, I believe. And like I said, this witness. So. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. It's these are life-changing events. It didn't hit me that hard, like I said, when I was 8. It didn't, because I guess I was just too young to take it in. But as an adult, when you see things or even thinking back on it, it really does change your kind of perspective.
Okay, we're got another question. I guess the crop circles actually caught a couple of nerves there. One listener wants to know, these people that claim they have created these crop circles, are they being led by UFOs? I guess it's kind of a stretch of a question. Are they being led by UFOs to make these crop circles?
I don't think so. I think they kind of say that they just want to go out and make this. I don't know what their purpose is, whether they're doing it as artwork or directly trying to hoax people or just trying to be a part of the phenomenon. A lot of people, they don't set out to hoax. They set out to kind of be a part of the experience. And but in any case, they're seeing things that UFOs and other weird lights and experiencing other weird stuff while they're out there making them. But I don't know that any have, that I've read. I mean, I haven't done extensive research on it, but the articles I read, they didn't say necessarily that they were being inspired, particularly by UFOs or being led by them to make.
Have you come across anybody that's been abducted by a UFO?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I was ever on a craft, but I woke up and there were 3 entities by my bed one time, and another time I woke up in a desert and there were 2 entities. I could not move, and there were 2 entities over my head. So these, they were definitely these gray type things. And this certainly meets the description of abduction phenomenon, but I don't believe I ever left my bed. I don't believe I was ever on a UFO. I think it's a form of out of body experience. But I've certainly experienced something, and it was very, very real. This wasn't a dream. This is very, very real.
So, do you have any these little implants? They talk about these little rice grain size implants. Have you heard any stories like that?
I have. I've heard stories. I've heard people who claim that they have them and so forth, and they can't get them out. It's very, very interesting. I had an MRI recently, and they asked me if I had any metal in my body, and I said, not to my knowledge. And so if I had any of these things in me, they're obviously not magnetic because it didn't set the machine off. But in any case, yeah, I've met a few people, a few experiencers who claim to have that they feel like they have some sort of implant.
Yeah, I used to have one of my things that I did when I was actually working for a living. I was a respiratory therapist, and I worked with MRI patients quite a bit. And the people that have had these little metallic objects in them, mostly welders, people that worked around metal quite a bit, they would complain about having these really hot, stinging sensations if they had a piece of metal in them that they didn't know they had before.
Oh, during the MRI?
Yeah, during the MRI, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be a problem.
Oh, yeah. Another question. Let's see. It is from Don't AFK in the YouTube chat. He wants to know about, have there been any sightings of dragons or dragon-like things that you're aware of?
I collected a pterodactyl type sighting in York County where I live in the 2000s over a local lake. Someone reported seeing what they described as a pterodon or a pterodactyl type creature. That's as close as I've gotten, but maybe might meet the description of dragon too.
Oh. Well, actually, you just triggered an old memory of mine, and I think I'm going to get in trouble with my girlfriend. I hadn't told her this story, but when I was about 8 years old, I saw, sitting in the back of my grandmother's car outside of a bank here local to me, what looked like, I thought was a pterodactyl, or a backwards flying airplane. I was like, what in the heck's that? And then later on, I remember reading in the paper a local sighting of a pterodactyl.
Oh, wow.
So, that's a personal memory of mine, and, I can't say anybody else saw it other than I was in the back of my grandmother's car looking up at the sky, and it was blue outside of a bank one day and going, well, that's strange.
Yeah. I mean, well, those are absolutely fascinating. So are the Thunderbird sightings. That we had a flap of them here, probably about 10 years ago now, where people were just reporting these massive, huge birds, like birds that stand up the size of a man. And they're just really, really interesting. It's something like those did exist. That's the thing. In prehistoric time, I forget the actual name of it, but we did have, raptors, birds that were that size, and so are these kind of relic things that people are seeing that are just left over somehow or never went extinct and we just thought they did, or are they something else entirely? But we get a good few of those Thunderbird reports. The pterodactyl reports less so, but there have been a few, and like I said, definitely the one in the county that I'm in.
Well, a lot of people is talking about Mothman. How far north have you heard of reports about Mothman? I know there was a scuttlebutt about maybe a Mothman being over in Las Vegas, but I think that was debunked a long time ago. It was last year when all that craziness was happening in Vegas. But have you heard? What's the range of reporting that you've heard?
Well, there's some very credible sightings that are happening around Lake Michigan and Chicago right now. I'm part of the Phantoms and Monsters investigation team that's researching that, and our lead investigator on that, Tobias, has taken some really, really credible witness reports in the area of, I'm not sure it's exactly the same thing people were reporting in Point Pleasant, but they're definitely, big things with wings and glowing eyes and so forth that people are reporting. Sometimes they, seeing flying, sometimes on the ground. I think one report, it was like just hovering just off the ground. I've had, Lon Strickler started collecting reports, nearby here in the next county over, of what he was calling, the Conewago Phantom, which meets the description of Mothman. It's a creature that flies, has big red eyes, and it's apparently screams from the woods. The other locals have been calling it Old Red Eye. Mm-hmm. And he has tracked several sightings of that along this Conewago Creek, which, interestingly enough, it's that meets the Susquehanna River just a few miles north of the Cador's Creek, which is that area by Toad Road, which I researched. And there, we do have a, we do have a sighting of a girl, and she specifically called it Mothman. She said, I saw Mothman, right in between those two creeks, closer to the Cador's Furnace area, closer to Cador's Creek. But it would have been in between those two creeks that she and her mother saw this, 8 to 10 foot tall black creature behind their car. They had pulled over to, look for deer in a field, and they saw this thing kind of rise up behind their car and extend its wings out, and they had enough. They kind of split from that, but they specifically reported as a Mothman entity.
Do you correlate these sightings with like large birds, raptors, migrations, like the great owl stuff? I know one of the large sightings of Mothman in Chicago area actually correlated with a big migration of great owls at the time. It was maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. Do you correlate?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked to see if there's a correlating migrations of big birds or sandhill cranes or anything like that. It's possible. Again, when the witnesses are very, very confident on what they're reporting, like a humanoid shape, with glowing eyes, for instance, and 10-foot wings or something. Most people don't make stuff up, and most people know the difference between an owl and a something that's standing 8 to 10 feet tall
with a set of wings.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What was the other question? I just had a question. There is a question that said, "What about reptilians and lizard man? Have you heard any sightings of the lizard man?"
We have like I said, we have a toad man here. I don't know if that's the same thing. It's a creature a woman called me about, and she said, Toad Road's named after the Toad Man. I had never heard that before. Like I said, to me, it was the tow path, and it probably got, the tow road probably turned into Toad Road over time. But in any case, she went to describe this creature that she said was a toad man that lived in the creek, that would come out of the creek, and it met the description of, like, say, the Loveland Frogman, for instance, these like kind of upright creature that was green and part toad and part man. Interestingly enough, I had reports in the area of other things that were green. People saw things that were squatted on the ground and kind of green, like humanoids that were, they reported these green things. So, is that a toad man or is it something else? I don't know, but it's possible. And I did turn up a report from 1907, I believe, of what people called a fish man. About 8 miles from there, they saw it walk out of the Susquehanna River, and they described it as a fish man. So again, fish man, toad man, same thing. I don't know, but certainly could be.
Oh. Well, one of the things I really like personally when it comes to paranormal sightings is these alien encounters. These people actually get videos on. I've talked with Lon Strickler that you referenced just a few minutes ago a few times, and we talked about a particular sighting this man had in his house. I think it was down in Florida, if I remember correctly, that he captured on a camera, security camera, only with a parabolic mirror. You know those mirrors they have in like grocery stores or where they can see around corners. He said that was the only way they can capture these sightings of aliens or whatever. Have you heard any strange details about how they capture these footages?
No, I mean I'm familiar with the case you're talking about with Lons. It's really, really interesting. That fella has kind of a repeat encounter situation going on, and really, really creepy stuff. I mean, he's gotten some things that look like reptilians. He's gotten these other entities that come through. He's gotten all kinds of stuff. It's very, very compelling. But his would be the only case I'm even the least bit familiar with, and that's just through Lon.
Okay. Have you heard of anybody complaining of seeing a lot of UFOs? That it's a habitual thing. Whatever it is, they go outside and boom, there's a UFO there, and it's night after night, or on a regular basis. I've
met a couple people who do claim to see them on a fairly regular basis, including a local Bigfoot researcher who's never seen Bigfoot, but he has seen multiple UFOs on multiple occasions.
Okay. So when you take these reports, whether it's a Bigfoot, cryptid, UFO, whatever, when you actually start listening to these reports, what is it that perks your ears up to say, well, this one may not be true?
Honestly, I haven't run into too many. the witnesses, even the one that I was saying that I disagreed with the woman, she was being very truthful. I think I just disagreed, with her. We just came to a different conclusion. But most people are very, very earnest and very, very truthful. They're very, when they decide to finally talk about it, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. When they decide to finally talk about it, they're very, very convincing. I haven't had, there's some kind of idea, I think, that people want fame or money from this stuff, and you're going to get neither if faking reports, and most people just end up getting ridiculed, if anything. So they don't have a lot of reason to fake them. I'm not a lie detector. I'd rather believe someone and be wrong than disbelieve them when they were telling the truth. And I think that's kind of where I land on that stuff. I'm sure I've been taken before by people either on the podcast or in my investigations and so forth. But for the most part, I think people are they've got no reason to lie.
Okay. We got a question. What do you think is going on with all the people missing in the forestry services from Canada down as far as into Mexico with all these missing 411?
Yeah, this is a really, really interesting thing. I think that probably most of them are natural causes one way or another. A lot of there's a lot of the cases people their clothes are stripped off. Well, when you go into hypothermia, you tend to strip your clothes off at some point. So I think a lot of them are explainable, but a lot of them are not as well. There's some that just simply are very, very strange, very, very strange cases where people will, disappear from one area, or small children, and appear like on the top of a mountain that they couldn't have never climbed, if they find them at all. So, what's going on? It's a big mystery. It's really, really interesting. The ones that seem to point to some very strange things are really compelling, really scary. But I don't have any answers. I think probably some of these cases point to something like Bigfoot. When people describe, I think there was one case where they described someone in the area saw a boy went missing, and somebody saw a bear running upright with a boy over its shoulder or tucked under its arm or something like that. That certainly points to something like Bigfoot, but I don't know if all of the cases can be accounted for by Bigfoot, and or if there's is Bigfoot part of something bigger that's going on. I don't know, but it's very, very interesting stuff. It's interesting mystery.
Well, you just reminded me about two stories I actually took about Bigfoot. Both of them actually happened in Canada, where two come from both adults, but both reports were on either side of the eastern and western Canada, but they're almost exactly alike, except one was a female and one was a male child. And it happened while they were in their real young youth. One was, I think, maybe about 5 or 6, and the other one maybe about 7 or 8. And both of them were separated from their parents or their guardian, whoever it was, out in the woods. And both of them described this stinky ape kind of scenario where this ape thing would look around a tree, get their attention, and then they would be curious and advance forward toward where they last saw this quote-unquote stinky ape. And then, as it went on, this stinky ape led them to whoever was searching for him. Have you heard of anything like that?
No, not specifically. I've had some taken some reports of some Bigfoot peeking around trees at kids. Certainly meeting that sort of behavior, but I uncovered a couple old reports of missing children, which have they disappeared. One of them in the wake of what they were calling, this is in the 1800s, they in the wake of a bunch of wildman sightings. This girl disappeared. She was actually found a few days later. She was like 2 years old or something. They found her a few days later. And then another girl went missing. There were no wildman reports at the time, but she went missing under mysterious circumstances, and they found her about a mile away from her house. Unfortunately, she died. But these are very kind of missing 411 type cases that I found in doing my historical research, that from the 1800s, and the other ones from the 1920s, I believe.
So how far back have you actually found stories? And I know you do a lot of historical work with old newspapers and whatnot. So how far back have you actually found printed in newspapers about Bigfoot type wild men? They call them wood booger in my area.
1840s, there's some that go back as early as 1820s in, I think, New York or so. And they usually call them wild men, but if you read the descriptions, either the behavior or the descriptions of them, covered with hair, 7 feet tall, etc., will make you think that these aren't some kind of old trapper or mountain man or something they're talking about.
So why do they call them wild men? Is it because they throw branches and rocks and stuff at intruders into the territory, or what's your theory on that?
Like I said, there's a wild man tradition that goes back, as long as the history of humans, and we've had wild men that meet the description of Bigfoot. I think right around 1900 they start calling them gorillas in the papers, and then you'll get a bunch of gorilla reports, and the wild men reports kind of die off. So I think what's going on there is the discovery in the West of the mountain gorilla. And that happens in the 1800s, and by the late 1800s, people have seen pictures or drawings, or at least read about these mountain gorillas. So at that point, when they see something big and hairy and upright in the woods, they know, oh, it's a gorilla. So they start calling them a gorilla. Before then, they see something hairy and upright, and they think, oh, well, it's like a man, but it's covered in hair, so it must be a wild man. It's a man who's wild. So it's just a matter of, I think that's the only name they had for it, until the late 1800s. Mm-hmm. And of course, they didn't start using Bigfoot and Sasquatch till much later.
All right. Well, we've got about 10 more minutes left on this show. A couple questions I have personally about you. When you go out and do your investigations out in the field, what kind of protection do you do? A lot of people do like deer hunting, they'll wash their clothes in, certain scent-freeing agents. Do you do any personal protection? Does anybody in your party that you hunt with or do the investigation with, do they take long personal protection?
A couple of my buddies, they do carry firearms. I do not, because I don't believe it would be much use anyway if it came down to it, but they do. I carry let's say spiritual protection is more important to me than that. So I'm covered in symbols which mean a lot to me personally, and my spiritual path.
So what kind of ritual or prayers or what is it that you do right before you go on an investigation?
I think it's, and this applies even to a hike in the woods, not necessarily even like an investigation. It's good to be centered. It's good to be, in a clear mind and aware of your surroundings. So it's just, a little bit of, probably centering and being be here now, I guess, that kind of, make sure you're in the moment.
Okay. Well, let's see, since we're talking about Bigfoot, and technology, we've touched on that just a little bit. A lot of people I've talked to that have come to me talking about what do the 4G and 5G towers. Now, 5Gs are towers or little things are about as big as an air conditioner unit that you would see stuck inside of a house window. Have you noticed anything that would affect one of these cryptids like that? Are they susceptible to EMF radiation?
It's a good question. I haven't noticed anything. I haven't noticed any increase or decrease of sightings around cell phone towers, for instance, or anything. I can tell you electrical power lines, you definitely get a spike in sightings around electrical power lines. A lot of people say, people believe they're flesh and blood creatures. They'll tell you that they follow the electric lines. Which, it would make sense. It's a nice, clear path. That's, it's not a highway. It's not a road. There's usually not people on electric lines. So, if they are natural creatures, maybe that's what they're doing. But that I can tell you they're seen around electric lines. As far as the cell phone stuff, I have no clue. You would think that, I don't know. I don't know.
That's your final answer, right?
Yeah. I'll have to come down with that.
With these migratory patterns, are they more active? These Bigfoot, Dogman sightings, these cryptid sightings, are they more active in spring, summer, winter, fall, or the storms bring them on, or not?
That's one of the things I'm trying to figure out, because like I said, I get, and I don't know about other places in the country. I'm really, really focused locally because I can get there. I can get to sightings, within, somebody calls me and they saw a Bigfoot yesterday, I can get there that day, or as soon as possible, within a day or two. I try to get there as soon as possible because, I want it fresh in their memory. I want, if there's any evidence there, I want to, be able to see if I can, collect any evidence or see any evidence. Photograph things and get everything as close to the original time of the sighting as possible. But I'm getting reports from all year round. We get them in the middle of winter. We get them in the middle of the summer. I think we tend to get more in the spring, just based on, and that's based on last year. I got a flood of them throughout the spring of last year, more than I think I've gotten any time previous. But this year it hasn't been the same. This year I've gotten a lot less, very few reports this year, actually. So yeah, I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out if weather has something to do with it or not. But certainly all times a year we've gotten reports and collected evidence, footprints and so forth. Again, nothing I could cast, but other researchers in the area have.
Here's another curious question. Based off of some discussions that I've had with Tim Skolline, he is a kind of a ghost photographer kind of fellow, but he has a theory that a lot of ghost activity and Bigfoot sightings and whatnot occur around streams, either running streams that you see above ground or the underground streams. Have you done any research into that with your Bigfoot? And Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. That's one of the questions I ask. I have kind of like a checklist. I ask witnesses, and one of them is, what's the nearest creek? And almost 100% of the time. Now, I live in an area with a lot of creeks, but they're usually raked by a creek. There's a lot of these sightings by the creek or by the river. Okay. Have you ever correlated anything with Indian activity in the past, like with burial sites, ceremonial sites, where they have actually set up camping historically throughout these areas where you've had these reports?
There are some where the Albatwitch sightings are. There have been some, either Indian towns or there were known areas where they would camp or so forth. So yeah, there are some. The problem is, Pennsylvania was settled pretty early, and the Native Americans were driven out of eastern and south central Pennsylvania pretty early. So what we have here is there's not a great history of it. There's some places like Washington Borough in Lancaster County, is right across from the river. It's a fantastic site, very, very important Native American site. And there are a few around, but the Susquehannock Indians, the ones I mentioned, for instance, who had the pictures of the Albatwitch creature on their shields, we don't know that much about them. We don't know their folklore. We don't know what they believed about those Albatwitch creatures. We only know that they pictured something like skinny and hairy on their shields that we assume to be the same thing. We don't know their language. We don't know their myths, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot has been lost because it just wasn't preserved. When the Europeans came here, they weren't concerned about it. I don't think they were actively trying to do it. Be that. I think they were just trying to live. Everybody was just trying to live at that time. It was hard living when you got here, and they just didn't think like, oh, we should preserve these legends and so forth. So there's. I think a lot of it's been lost to time, sadly.
Well, Tim, we've got about another minute or two. You want to tell my fine folks out there listening how to get in touch with you, how to follow you on your podcasts and whatnot?
Sure. Again, it's strangefamiliars.com, and all of that contact information goes right to me. If you want to email me, strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com. You can find Strange Familiars at strangefamiliars.com or whatever podcatcher you prefer. Also, we're on YouTube. My books are on Amazon. You can look up Timothy Renner. My books should come up. Some of them are available as ebooks. All of them are available as paperbacks. And contact me. I love to hear about sightings. If you have historical reports, I'd love to hear historical reports, and happy to talk to anybody about all this weird stuff.
Thank you again, Timothy, for coming on board on Chasing the Truth, and I appreciate your patience as I was going through this technical difficulty. I still don't know what the heck went on there. But
no problem.
I appreciate it very much, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Folks, go over to IamDarkWaters.com. Subscribe there. That's where you can get all of the fantastic paranormal, Dogman, cryptid, you name it. Dark Waters has got it on IamDarkWaters.com. And he's got his own web store over there. Go over there and look in that. You might find something that you might like to be part of your collection. Also, you can find my podcast over there on IamDarkWaters.com. How to get in touch with me, obviously, is Sean G, SHAWNG, at IamDarkWaters.com. And you can reach out to me there if you've got any questions, any sightings, any experiences. That's the big thing that I would love to get in touch with you. Just reach out to me right there at SeanG at IamDarkWaters.com. And folks, every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, you can find Chasing the Truth on the Dark Waters radio channel. Also, I am on at the same time period, Monday through Saturday. But Saturday nights are the time that you can find me live, on-air, new shows of Chasing the Truth. And I appreciate your kind attention. And, again, I do apologize with the technical difficulties for tonight's show. Hopefully, we'll get all that straightened out by the time we roll around again next Saturday night on Chasing the Truth.
Do ghosts really exist? Are we alone? Is there life after death?
It looks like a giant ape with a man's face.
We've done some testing to determine if it is a synthesizer or not.
And it's not.
It's very difficult to do with the system.